It's time to look at the San Antonio Spurs. Yes, we are going to talk about Victor Wembanyama, but there are some other interesting things on this team that deserve our discussions after the 23-24 NBA season. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I don't get my clothes, not anymore, from Fashion Nova or Shein. I'm bringing back Just Jeans. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. If you've got a competitive side like me, well, you're going to be a big fan of Monopoly Go. It is the mobile hit twist on a classic Monopoly. Join up with your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or on Google Play. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen. Every day we are free. We are available on all platforms. Why don't you double bang? I love the thumbs. I love the comments. I love the bells. I love the subscribes. I love the follows. I love the reviews. All that stuff is awesome. It helps out a lot. I just realized I'm doing a show on the Spurs and I'm wearing a Brooklyn Nets t-shirt. Maybe I should go to Just Jeans. If that doesn't even exist anymore, I think. But it's funny. For me, anyway. All right, we're talking San Antonio Spurs. A team that was obviously full of interest right across the NBA for really one reason. Well, a couple of reasons, but one main reason. And we know that that was Victor Wembanyama. Let's take a look at the team in general. They finished 22-60, which is the same amount of games they won the year before, which is not ideal. There were some questionable coaching decisions on this squad. Obviously, they were not trying to win. They were trying to develop. They were trying to experiment. Towards the end, they sort of shifted their focus a little bit more. But that's why the record is not that good, and their team was trash also. But they only had a negative 6.3 net rating. Compare and contrast that to the Hornets and the Blazers from the last two shows, who were both worse than negative 10, and the Wizards and Pistons both negative 9. Huge fall off between those four crud munchers and this team, even though in the win-loss record stakes, we're talking like 21, 21, 22 between San Antonio, Portland, Charlotte. So big differences in net rating, big differences in, I think, overall team quality, especially when we take a look at how this team produced down the end. They had the 26th best offense, San Antonio, and of course the 21st best defense. And that is literally because of one person, and that's Victor Wembanyama. Without him, they would have, I think they were 30th without him, and they were like 12th or something with him on the court. So it was a crazy split because we know that he is awesome. He is going to, hasn't yet, or he might have by the time we watch this, he is going to finish first in Rookie of the Year and second in Defensive Player of the Year. I've got zero doubt about that. He's going to make first team all defense, and he is going to win. I will say he will win, let's say combined, 8 MVPs and Defensive Player of the Years. Combined is my guess. Their preseason over-under was 28.5. It's very high. I had them at 28, and I did do an adjustment to that just before the season started down to 27, but regardless, hit the under on that. A small one, just snuck under, should have gone way under, but that is what we would call in the industry a W. Let's look at the draft. They do have a relatively strong draft hand. It might be a better draft hand than... well, it could be better, it could be worse than what we currently see here. They have got the chance to pick anywhere from between pick 1 and pick 9 with their own pick. The least likely positions of those is picking at 5 or picking at 9. So 2.2% at 5, 0.6% at 9. Okay? So that is, yeah, and that's which is interesting because they have the 5th best lottery odds, yet only a 2.2% chance of picking at 5. This is why lottery odds is really interesting when you look at it, because this is the 5th team, but 2 out of every 100 times they pick 5th. 98 times out of 100, they don't. They could fall all the way down to 9 if 4 teams behind them jump them. seems really unlikely that'll happen. Their most likely position to finish with this selection is pick 7, and that's at 27%. But they also could get another pick. It's the Toronto Raptors pick, which the Raptors idiotically traded for Jakob Poeltl. They have a 54.1% chance of getting that pick. That pick is top 6 protected. Yes, the Raptors finished 6th in the overall lottery odds, but like we said, that doesn't mean that you're going to get it. They've only got an 8.6% chance of finishing 6th, the Raptors, and then it's in the 9s for finishing top 4. Meaning there is a 54% chance that the Spurs get that pick. The most likely outcome is that that pick also lands at 7. So the Spurs pick most likely outcome is 7. The Raptors pick most likely outcome is 7 as well. There's a chance the Spurs are picking 7 and 8 back to back. Their second most likely outcome for the Toronto pick is finishing at 8. And then the next one is that it moves into the top 4. But they could have very easily pick 1 and pick 7. Not very easily, but a 10% chance of pick 1, a 30% chance of pick 7 with the Raptors pick. Overall, I think it's safe to say that they will pick at 7. Whether it's their own pick or... it's not safe to say, but it's over 50% chance they'll pick at 7. Whether it's their own or the Raptors pick. And of course, if that pick moves up to the top 4, the Raptors pick, or it stays at 6, Toronto gets it and San Antonio doesn't get it. They also have their own second rounder, pick 35, and they've got the Lakers second rounder at pick number 48. So a mid-second rounder, part of the old Marc Gasol deal, where Marc Gasol was traded from the Grizzlies to the Lakers. Not the original one where he went from the Lakers to the Grizzlies, when he went back to the Lakers. And then the way that he was used in the Lakers caused him to retire from the NBA. So that's where we're at there. That's it. That's where we're at with the draft for this squad. What about their most common starting lineup? Well, this one, all the other teams we did, it's like this lineup started 8 times, this lineup started 6 times, and that was the most common. These blokes for the Spurs started 34 times. They only won 10 games, winning percentage of 29.4, which clearly is not very good. But we saw these guys play a lot. Trey Jones, Devin Vassell, Bubbles, Julian Champagnie, Jeremy Sochan, and Victor Wembanyama. That was the most common starting lineup that they used. It wasn't their best 5-man group. Their best 5-man group was actually a staggering plus 25.6. And this was not particularly small sample. It was their second most used lineup combination for the year, 297 possessions for a plus 25.6. The other interesting thing is their most used lineup combination was that starting group, which had 870 possessions, and both of those lineups had positive net ratings. This one, plus 25.6. The starting group, plus 3. It's when you tried to mix in any of the other crud that the problems arose. So I'm going to tell you what the best lineup was. It's basically the starters, but the horse Keldon Johnson starts instead of Julian Champagnie. And we know Johnson was glued to being, was in that group. Johnson was glued being a bench guy all season. That is his role on a good team. I firmly believe this and have for years. But when he was mixed in with those other starters, that team had unbelievably good success. Their offense was 127 points per 100. Their defense was 101. That is an insane number. It's 300 possessions. It's small, but it's not super, super small. So it just gives you a bit of an idea of, while it was a bad season, there were some things that were interesting. Free agency for this team, not a lot happening here. They've got cap space, obviously. I think they're going to be more active in trades than anything. They're restricted guys, Sandro Mamakilishvili, Dom Barlow, and David Duke Jr. Not thinking he'll be back. But Barlow is, I think, a capable backup center. I think Mamu's actually a capable backup center as well. They've cornered the market on capable, unheralded young backup centers. Charles Bassey, returning from an ACL next year. Dom Barlow. Sandro Mamakilishvili. You could throw Zach Collins, although he is overpaid for his role at the moment. But if teams are looking for, hey, can we get an interesting developmental young backup center? The Spurs have got them all. Well, not all of them, but they've got a lot of them. Mamu, Barlow, Bassey. But both Mamu and Barlow are restricted guys this offseason. Chetty Osman, the Discman, he is an unrestricted free agent. He came across in the deal where the Cavs were making sign and trade moves to get Max Strus. The Spurs were using that. They were part of that as a facilitator. I didn't think Osman would play that much. He played more than I thought. I thought he was okay. I'm not going to discuss Osman in detail here because I don't think he's got any real path to being a significant rotation player in the NBA. Wouldn't be shocked if he actually goes back to Europe, Yuta Watanabe style. Not to, actually, Yuta's going to Japan, sorry, not to Europe. Just saying I'm done. I might go back to Europe and have some success. Chetty was solid, but yeah, I don't think he's a key part of anything, and he is unrestricted. They've got 3 interesting non-guaranteed players. One of them is Bubble Champagnie. That's only a $3 million contract. He will get guaranteed, no problem with that. Goldfinger Charlie Bassie is non-guaranteed. Like I said, he's coming off the ACL, $2.5 million non-guaranteed this season. I say 24-25 and 25-26. So 2 more years left, $6 million or non-guaranteed. I guess they would bring him back, but they also might not because Barlow, Mamu, Zach Collins can all be there. And we'll check on Bassie's knee. That's a possibility. But the other one is Devontae Graham, who barely played, showed some flashes down the stretch when they went to him. He's got a $12.6 million contract, but only $2.8 million of that is guaranteed. So they can cut him whenever when is the guarantee date? I think the guarantee date is the 1st of July. It is. So they can cut him or trade him to a team that wants to cut him and save $10 million in cap space. So just be aware, it's an expiring contract, but also a contract that can be traded or used for the Spurs to get a team $10 million in cap savings. I don't think Devontae's really got it in him to be good anymore, but he at least showed a flash where we go, maybe we could have used him. There are 3 players who head into the season on expiring contracts. One of them is their starting point guard, Trey Jones. He'll be an unrestricted free agent. They only signed him to a really small deal last offseason. That's why I was always like, just keep your hopes pretty low for Trey. They signed him to be a backup. They want another point guard, and I would be pretty surprised if he is the Spurs starting point guard all of next season. I'll be pretty surprised. The other 2 expiring guys are two-way players, Jamari Boye and Raekwon Gray. Who knew that Boye and Gray held the two-way slots for the Spurs at the moment because they cycled through quite a bit. No offense to those blokes and their families. I don't care. We don't care about them whatsoever from a fantasy perspective. Jones is going to be the interesting one. What's his contract? It's like $9 million. Like really, really small number, obviously. And then unrestricted the year after. And he's still relatively young. That's the intriguing one. What do they do there? They want to upgrade, I'm certain. But $9 million for a capable backup, which is what Trey is a totally, totally reasonable price. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. In Monopoly Go, much like in sports, you can team up with friends/teammates for time tournaments. You work together and you build up each other's boards. In fact, one of those little tournament event things just finished on Monopoly Go. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes that you unlock, the more dice rolls you get, the more cash you get to build out your boards. You get stickers that you can trade with your friends as well. Hey, I need this to complete a set. What about you give me this one? Trade them through. All that is a possibility, along with like classic Monopoly. Roll dice, move on to the board, community chess, chance, put properties on, take rent off people, but fast pace. So, there's always something new and fun. It's changing all the time on Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go and download it now, free, on Google Play or the App Store. Monopoly Go, game on. Okay, let's take a look at the starters. And with most of the teams that I have done so far, there has been like 6 guys that I would consider starters. On this team, like I said, they use this one starting lineup basically all season. So I'm going to talk about 5 guys that they currently consider as starters. But it's time to get, I don't know what the right word, I do know what the right word is. The right word is that it's time to get Danish, Turkish, backhanding, gripping, rustying, trombone playing, brass instrument legends, and talk about Victor Wembanyama. Because it was insane. This is what I will reiterate my thoughts on Wembanyama from the preseason. Love him. Top 3 dynasty guy. Think he's going to be awesome and just a very clear, successful NBA player. But I also was happy not to take an extreme risk in a draft because I just didn't know, A, how they would use him minutes-wise, B, like how long does it take for everything to translate across, and his price kept getting pushed up and up, and it's just so rare to see rookies finish high in the rankings. So I was like, I'm not certain that I would do it in round 2. Round 3 probably, but I wasn't actually in on that. And that's obviously a gigantic L. I'm okay with taking the L on that because I think it's a generally good idea to have a level of caution about rookies and translating European / college / G League numbers across to the NBA and how they're going to all come across. But this guy just killed it. Wemby he's still only 20. He played 71 games. A lot of people thought he just wouldn't play. He only played 30 minutes, and that's probably the scary thing for everybody going up against him in fantasy, 30 minutes only. Had a couple of ankle tweaks, played through them, played back-to-backs. There's just a general narrative which is garbage, and I push back on him a lot. Like, we'll talk about this when we get to the Thunder eventually on this, but I can't draft Chet, he's never going to be able to play. Bro played 82 games. Oh, they're just going to Pop. You know what Pop does? He's the load management king. He's just going to sit Victor all the time. He'll be shut down by the All-Star break. All right. People make stuff up all the time, and then that snowballs, and we go with it. It's why often I seem like I'm being, I don't know if it's aggressive or not, but actually providing context behind why these things happen versus what like some clown on a network with 4 letters screams at the top of his voice while being incredibly wrong, yet it gets lapped up and then snowballs through with meme accounts and aggregating accounts, which is just plainly false. And it happens all the time. So I'll always push back on it. But I still didn't expect that we'd necessarily get this from Wemby. His ADP was 25th. He finished 5th. 5th in -1 rankings. 5th as a rookie in 30 minutes. He was 8th in points leagues. Now, I have heard this from people, some fantasy analysts, that maybe we have to have a rule where we ban Wembanyama. If you draft Wembanyama, you lose a 3rd-round pick. And I cannot stress to you enough that I'm not even 100% against this. I'm like 1,000,000% against this. No. You just adjust to it. Now, what I would suggest, and it has always been and will always be the fairest way to have a draft, is to run an auction. That's very obviously the fairest way. If you're running a snake, you do a 3rd-round reversal. We've talked about this a lot. But also, if Wembanyama is going at 1, that means that you're getting Jokic or Shea or Luka at 2, 3, and 4. You will have other players in 2 years. Cooper Flagg will come into the NBA and start to be maybe a top 10 player. You will get maybe like a guy that might have been an equivalent top 2 player at pick 6 in a couple of years. It's just asinine to me to incorporate these rules of like an overreaction of like banning him or taking away your draft picks because you draft someone awesome. And he is going to be awesome. He is going to be better than everybody in fantasy very quickly. I have no problem saying that. It feels obvious. But also, what if you take Wembanyama, you got stripped of your 3rd-round pick because your commissioner got crazy, and then knock on wood, he gets hurt in week 1, he's out for the year. But what happens then? Do you get your 3rd-round pick back? Ridiculous. You play it straight. 21 points, 2 threes, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.2 steals, and 3.6 blocks. And that 3.6 blocks is actually underselling how good he is there. He might average 4.5 next season. The problem you're going to have maybe is that teams might just start avoiding going towards him. But honestly, 4 blocks, it's 4 events. They might avoid him 40 events, but he'll still get those blocks. With him, I'm not as worried as I am with guys like Kessler or Turner or Jaren in the past. I'm not actually that worried about his block numbers. The assists and steals were a nice surprise. He shot 47 from the field and 80 from the line. He shot 33 from 3. Like, he was taking pull-up, step-back threes from the logo at times. This is, again, going to be an insane player. I'm including 2 of the crafted comparisons now. And I'm trying to narrow it more down to specific positions. Because on crafted, it gives you right across the positional spectrum. And I'm trying to just narrow it down. So the top 2 names that came up is year 3 of Anthony Davis and year 3 of Kevin Garnett. Yeah. He was 95th percentile on EPM, 97th in CPM. His free throw rate was only 74th percentile, which, while it's awesome for a rookie, that could get way bigger. And that's, again, a way that he's able to cement himself, averaging 27, 12, 4.5 assists, 1.4 steals, 4.5 blocks, 57 from the field, 83 from the line, hitting 2.5 threes, which is an unassailable number 1 player. It's a lot of talk on Victor Wembanyama, but I think it is important. If you're in a rookie, if you're in a dynasty draft, you take nobody else. There is no one that is worth it. You don't think you're being cute by trading Wemby and getting Doncic back. You're not. You're not. Devin Vassell is the next guy we're going to talk about. Vassell, still not 24, got his contract extension. He's 68 games. He played 33 minutes. The year before was ruined by a lot of knee problems. Thankfully, that wasn't an issue here. He was 74th in -1, 69th in points. His ADP was 69, and probably one of the rare players that did like literally exactly what you expected around that ADP. Hard to say that like you pick him at 69, he does exactly that. 19 points, 2.5 threes, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. That's interesting. 4 assists, 1 steal. Shot 80 from the line, 55 on twos, 37 on threes, 47 overall. I like all that. I like Vassell a lot. I've been pretty high on Vassell as a player. I'm not really sure what the next step is from here. What does he improve there? Maybe the 47 field goals, but he's at 55 on twos. How much higher does he take that? I'm not sure. His top comparisons were Rocket Rodney Hood as a rookie. Don't love that one. And year 5 of Boobie Gibson. Don't love those comparisons for what Vassell did. I thought Vassell was really strong, but that's a little red flaggy, a little. He was 89th percentile on EPM, 39th percentile CPM, so massive discrepancy there. But what I did like is his box creation in the 80th percentile. And he showed, we detailed this in the Spurs preview show back in September, that his ability and the change in his value as a pick and roll ball handler and the frequency of how often he did that was way up. And we go, that's an interesting little development, is he's becoming a passer, becoming a pick and roll guy. And he averaged 4 assists in his box creation 80th. And while they've had all these issues with ball handling and point guards, that's something to watch. Can he turn into a full, I won't say Bradley Beal, because obviously the name and the reputation of Bradley Beal at the moment is in the mud, but I will say Bradley Beal, because Bradley Beal in Washington was a guy that would get like 6.5 assists while averaging 26, 27 points. Now, Vassell might not get to that, but as a 2-guard, that level of ball handling, maybe that's the thing that pushes him up to the next level and pushes him into the top 40. Maybe. He's only like 4 years in here. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That is the formula for a winning championship team. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed or power or style or whatever, honestly, eBay Motors has you covered. Kitsch. eBay Motors can do that for you. Less performance. I'm sure they can handle that as well. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, not all at once, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Now, there's nothing worse than having your part not fit in your ride. But eBay Motors handles that. eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. So with all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to US customers. Guess we're worthless then. Okay. Next player. It is the starting point guard on this squad. We're talking Trey Jones, who there was a lot of consternation about why Trey wasn't starting earlier in the year. He's clearly this point guard. We need to get Wemby into position. We heard this a lot. And I understand that. But I also, at the time, said I get what they're doing. Like, they're not here to win a championship this season. They want to see, like, what can we do if Vassell handles? What can we do if Sochan's our point guard? And they tried it and they went, no, probably not. But it helped those players develop. And then Trey came in, did his little thing, helped a lot of stuff. They changed their lineups. They made the correct adjustments. But again, if we're looking at this team as like, you must do everything optimal right now to win every game right now, then that's not the way they were looking at it, and that's not the way we should have looked at it. Jones is 24, like we just talked about, unrestricted free agent after next season, played 28 minutes a night, 131st in -1. Yahoo will tell you that he was 79th again. Totals and turnovers. Under no circumstance would you, again, this is how I want you always to assess the Yahoo rankings. Would you look at this and go, yeah, Trey Jones was definitely a 7th round player? Like, you don't think that. So that's where we get that. His ADP was 106th, but only drafted in 95% of leagues. He was 128th in points. He averaged 10 points, under a 3 a game, even though he hit him at 34%. 4 rebounds, 6 assists and a steal. As like his brother, incredibly low turnover or really high assist to turnover ratio. What I found really interesting is his number one comparison was second-year Jalen Brunson. Now, second-year Jalen Brunson is not the same as this Jalen Brunson. But that's a little bit interesting. I don't really see this for Trey. I don't think he's got any sort of usage upside like Brunson did. But that's interesting. And the other one was year 2 of Chris Duhon, Knicks legend. He was quite impactful for them. 82nd percentile EPM, 73rd in CPM. But this is the problem. Like, he hit his threes okay, but offensively, there's a real issue with him. So low usage. 30th percentile in three-point attempt rate. Bro, you got to get more of them up. That's where, like, he's just so unaggressive and he just doesn't space enough and he's not dynamic as a passer that that's why I don't see him as a future starting point guard for this team. But, again, was strong, showed that we do need a solid point guard there next to Victor, and I don't think that it's him. It would depend on what they do in the offseason as to how I approach Trey for Dynasty or for Fantasy Redraft. But I'm not going to be putting a high priority on him. I don't think there is a big breakout or anything coming. I think that this season and maybe even last season is sort of like, it's hard to say best case, but best case? Maybe? Let's talk about the man who started the season at point guard. I was a bit shocked to see that Jeremy Sochan's ADP was 142 and only drafted in 35% of leagues. I thought, given that he was mentioned as the starting point guard, that people would just be taking flyers on him. And I think that's reasonable. A starting point guard who's young, with defensive stat upside and good rebounding numbers, there's a lot of value in that. Now, it obviously didn't work out. But I'm shocked that people didn't take that plunge. Sochan's about to turn 21, so he's young still. Played 30 minutes a night. Despite like how bad it seemed that he was 146th in -1, 134th in points. He averaged 12 points, 0.9 threes, which is more than Trey Jones. 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Not bad. What I would love is, as a guy that defends as well as he does, like generate some defensive events, 0.8 steals and 0.5 blocks. That's what I'm going to call him. I hate the term stocks. Stupid term. Don't like it. But when I want to just talk about your ability to generate defensive stats. I hate saying defensive stats. I'm going to call them defensive events. Sounds fancier. Sounds a little bit more refined. Defensive events. Maybe it's stupid. But, it's the off-season. Let's get dumb. He only shot 44% from the field and 77% from the line. Now, when he entered the NBA, he was at like 60% from the line, then adopted the one-hand free throw push method, and it worked, and he improved, and that's great. What we love to see from players like this is unselfishness, versatility, willingness to work, and willingness to improve. And like, I would say that all of those things very clearly happened with Sochan. And that is, to me, a really strong indicator of what he does moving forward. His defensive versatility metric is 90th percentile. So while the defensive events weren't high, he's able to guard a lot of guys. And I think that all of these things lead to significant improvements coming up. He shot 31% on threes. Again, I would expect that you would tell me you thought he was a terrible three-point shooter. That's not a great number, but I guess the ballpark number I think you would have guessed was 27, 28. He's never going to be a high volume 39% guy, but he can have some 35 seasons, I think. The two most common comparisons were year 3 of Alexei Pokusevski. I guess it's a big man who gets some passing numbers in, but Poku blocks more shots. And the other one was a bloke, Sylvester Gray, who played 1 year in the NBA. I don't love that one. Go and have a look just look up some Sylvester Gray stats. He was 47th percentile EPM, but only 10th percentile CPM. Sochan, so that there was some issues there. Obviously, like the problems that they were so bad when Trey Jones wasn't there, but Sochan was the guy. That's part of that. But what I do like is the fact that he was put into an unfamiliar role. I won't say he excelled, but I won't say he was dreadful at it. Yeah, he's got some tunnel vision, and we saw so many clips of him ignoring Wemby, so to speak. Wemby still had a gigantic usage, so like let's be fair, like he can't take every shot. Sochan's passer rating was in the 64th percentile, which as a guy who's not a point guard, I think that's okay. I think that's pretty good. I don't think you should be too down on that. The last starter is Bubbles. It's Julian Champagnie. And Champagnie followed a very similar script this season. And I'll explain what I mean in a second. He's not 23. He's only 22 still, 23 soon. He played 74 games in 20 minutes. At the end of last season, Champagnie started, and I thought he showed a lot. And then this season, he quickly moved into the starting lineup. Keldon Johnson went to the bench, which is something that I called on for a while. But what I said with Champagnie is like he plays this 20-minute-a-night starting role. It doesn't mean anything. But wait until later in the season. This will probably happen when guys don't play. Keldon or Vassell are out, and Trey Jones is out. Sochan misses. He'll ramp everything up and put up numbers, and that is exactly what he did. That scalability is impressive to me. Not that a team would ever want to rely upon Julian Champagnie to be that guy, but having an ability to do it, and there are plenty of players who can't, that's good. 260th in -1, 277th in points. He averaged 7 points. Champagnie did 3 rebounds, 0.6 steals and 0.6 blocks. And the 0.6 blocks look small, but it's a small forward playing 20 minutes a night. It's very good, actually. Shot 41 from the field, 82 from the line. And that's, again, why field goal percentage is such a misleading number. And honestly, a category we probably shouldn't use in fantasy. Because he shot 50% from 2 and 37% from 3, but like 80% of his shots were from 3. So his field goal percentage is going to look low, even though effectiveness-wise, he was good. But it makes him look like a bad player from a field goal percentage perspective. His number one comparison was rookie year Josh Richardson, and I get that. A three-point shooting, shot-blocking wing. And then it was year 3 of Jeff Green, back in... Was he in Seattle still then? Or maybe Oklahoma City? Very different to current Jeff Green, 20-year veteran, Jeff Green, small ball center Jeff Green. He was 60th percentile Champagnie in EPM, 57th in CPM, and his rim defense was 76th percentile as a 6'7" wing. Now, is he 6'7" or did I make that up? Let me just go and quickly check that, because sometimes I say stuff that I think is right and then I'm not. And I'd like to be right. Oh yeah, I am. 6'7". There we go. W. I think that he is at least a solid rotation player for a couple of years, but this team shouldn't look at him as like an unassailable guy that is a clear part of their core and they have to build around. I don't think anyone would suggest that. Although when you go to Crafton, they've got their young core grouping. He's one of them. He's one of them, which is very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I like him. He has little flashes, but it's got to be very specific situations to get him there. The blocks is what is really intriguing. What about some other players, the non-starters? Well, we are going to start with a guy that was a part of that best lineup on the team, and that is the horse, Keldon Johnson, who I think is highly overrated or was highly overrated by people. I think people realize now what he is, and that on any team that wants to be a playoff team, he cannot be a high-level starter. He is a sixth-man player. I think the Spurs should have traded him last season. There was some buzz that maybe he's good. Like, he's not, but like there was some buzz about that. You might have got a first out of it. Not sure you get that now. Not that he was terrible, but he's 24, played 69 games, 30 minutes coming off the bench, 144th in -1, 155th in points. His ADP was 122. He averaged 16 points with 2 threes, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, which is a big step up for him. Putrid defensive stats always through college, rookie year, every year in the NBA just doesn't generate defensive events. 0.7 steals and 0.3 blocks. He shot 45 and 79, 35 from 3. He's been usually a poor-ish three-point shooter who just loves to put his head down, barrel into the lane, and try and attack the rim. And I would say his tunnel vision is way more of an issue than what Sochan's is. 79 from the line is solid, but overall his fantasy appeal just isn't there. He's one of those guys where, like, extreme level Brandon Ingram, where if he could put up really good numbers, but your team would win 5 games because he'd have to be the number one guy. He'd have to just bludgeon his way to generating assists and scoring because he's taking like 38 usage and playing 38 minutes a night, and that means your team was winning nothing. And fitting into a role player zone where he doesn't move the ball, he's not a super strong defender, he doesn't get defensive stats, he's not a knockdown shooter, he's sort of sitting in between. Where if this was, say, like, and the G League's sort of a little bit different, but like we were talking baseball terms, and you have like the AAA and then the mythical Quad A, he'd be a dominating Quad A player. I'm the man on this team, lower level opponents, destroying You put him up into the bigs and like he's mid again. That's sort of where I see him. His two best comps for last season were year 2 Kyle Kuzma. So Kuzma on the Lakers. That's before the championship, I believe. And year 3 Desmond Mason. And the Kuzma one makes sense. Inefficient, no defensive stats. Not Kuzma's passing this season well ahead of where it was back then. And Johnson did improve, but still not great. He was 52nd in EPM, and that's actually higher than I thought it would be. Crafted had him at 15th percentile. And what I was really interesting, which is this stat here, the RADTOV, which is regularized, adjusted defensive turnovers, meaning it's an adjusted stat over a larger sample size, like how often are you creating turnovers? And 19th percentile. Like as a guy that you should be 3 and D, where's the D, where's the 3? Like he's a P. He's a points. That's what he is. So yeah, and all of these things have been very apparent all the way through Keldon, from Kentucky all the way through his career, and now it's a great lesson for those guys on bad teams who might put up okay numbers, and you go, look, we actually scored 20 points a game. You go, yeah, but when a team gets better, and they eventually will, what the hell does he do? And I think this is the perfect example. Now, again, part of that really good lineup, he was solid. And he's not a terrible player. He's just a guy that you got to be cautious about your expectations. Got to be cautious about your expectations about this bloke. Number one, because what is that haircut? Zach Collins. Number 2 is he suffered another shoulder injury and he's going to have surgery. He just had surgery, so I don't know his availability for next season. He's had multiple leg injuries as well. He had the opportunity this season to start next to Wembanyama. Now, getting benched was in part because he did struggle, but also because of Wembanyama and the very clear idea that Wemby needs to play center, which we knew heading into the season that Wembanyama would not start as a center. That was telegraphed from a mile away. We knew Zach Collins was the starting center, but they quickly realized that that wasn't the path forward. And now Collins is hurt again, and now he's a backup center. He's 26. He played 22 minutes a night, 69 games. So again, I'll say he's had off-season shoulder surgery. He did, but he played through a lot of stuff. Had a couple of ankle tweaks, but that's pretty good. 179th in -1, 111th ADP. I liked drafting him because, again, he was the starting center. I didn't think they would go away from it as quickly as they did, but I was wrong. Cool. 11 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.8 blocks, shot 48 and 75, 32% from 3, but that's part of it. If he's going to be this guy that shoots some threes, he's got to do it better than that. He's got to be a little bit more stretchy, which may have made it easier for him to work alongside Wemby. Also a terrible assist-to-turnover ratio. His best comps were Rick Smits. And I don't believe there is an ethnicity or skin color part of the comparison, but 2 big white guys, there you go. And the next guy was Richard Washington, both year 5 options. The advanced stuff actually hated Zach this season, 39th in EPM and 7th in crafted in percentiles. And one of those reasons were 5 rebounds is in 22 minutes as a center is not good enough. He was 43rd percentile in defensive rebounding quality, which takes a couple of metrics into consideration. But that's just not going to cut it. Bad rebounding, dropped to shooting, turned it over a lot. And this was the chance to see Zach Collins in a starting role, lasted, 10 games or whatever. And that's it. It's not going to happen unless there's injuries, I'm guessing. I would say that the Malachi Branham, had a bad second season. Someone who I was marginally interested in the draft, shot well at Ohio State, had some interesting numbers, but his time in the NBA has not looked great. And I'm not going to say it's a comp, but the way his game is fantasy-wise, you just have to look at his teammate, Keldon Johnson. Like, you need a lot of things tailored towards him because he's not going to generate stuff in other categories. It's all going to be scoring. He's only 21. He played 21 minutes a night. He started for a big chunk of time, but he also was terrible in those games. This is probably the worst combination of of advanced metrics that I've seen as well. He was 329th in -1, 291st in points, Malachi Branham. 9 points a game, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.4 steals in 21 minutes. Shot 43 from the field, including 49 from 2 and 35 from 3. And you've just got to be a better finisher and better shooter. You have to be. Now, what is interesting is that his number 1 statistical comparison was year 2 of Anthony Simons. Now, Simons didn't play a huge amount in year 2. That was before he sort of started to get unleashed, back when he was playing behind Dame and CJ. I'm just going to have a look at Simons' second year and give it a look at those minutes there. He played 20 minutes a night, started 4 games, shot under 40%, with 8 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist. But we all know that Simons developed in year 4 into a high-level scorer and then became a 20-point scorer 2 years in a row. I'm not saying Branham's going to get there because I don't view Branham as a 3-point shooting threat the way Simons is. But that was interesting to see him there. The other name was Frank Jackson, year 2. But 9th percentile EPM, 0th, which isn't even a real word. 0th, which is literally like you are the worst player in the NBA for crafted plus minus. 0th. His free throw rate, again, 10th percentile. If you are going to be a lead guard type, not a point guard, but a lead guard. He played some point guard, but a guy that, give me the ball, let me score, you got to draw free throws, man. And when you can't hit threes and you're not drawing free throws, what are you doing? You can't defend, you're not rebounding. Like, there was so many things here. I go, this Malaka is giving us nothing. And it's going to be the occasional game where he has 20 points on 7 of 9 shooting in 15 minutes. You go, oh, here we go. But there's just way too many gaps in the overall game for Malaka. This guy was drafted the first round the same time as Branham, and that is Blake Wesley. And I couldn't have told you, well, I could tell you. I will tell you right now. His rookie year was absolutely, not embarrassing because it's great that you get to the NBA, but the numbers were shocking. But year 2, Blake Wesley, big improvement. He's 21. He played 61 games, 14 minutes out of Notre Dame. Some of his shooting numbers and rim finishing as a rookie were putrid, which is clearly a problem. And he was able to improve it. What did he go to? 33rd percentile at the rim, 59%. Understanding that as a rookie, he was 1st percentile at the rim, 39%. And a true shooting of 39 as a rookie. He was 374th in -1. He averaged 4 points and 2.7 assists in 14 minutes with 0.9 turnovers. That's a good ratio. Half a steal in 14 minutes. Not bad. Shot only 22% from 3, which is horrible after being 39 as a rookie. And 56 on 2s after being, what was he on 2s as a rookie? Like 36%? So I don't know. Is he a good 3-point shooter or a bad one? Is he a solid 2-point guy or a terrible one? The data is conflicting. But I thought he took steps forward and looked better for a lot of the time, better than Malaka Branham. Wesley is a guy that gets blocked at the rim a ton. His rim finishing is quite bad, but it was good to see an improvement even though it's only up to 33rd percentile. The number 1 comps for him were names that you'll know from a long time ago, but rookie year Sean Livingston and rookie year Baron Davis. Now, you can go and look at rookie year Sean Livingston and Baron Davis. I think Davis averaged 6 points a game and Livingston 5. They didn't play very much back then. But we all know they turned in. Livingston, the injury wrecked him, but we all know what sort of players they turned into. So I'm not going to rule out Wesley from being a backup capable player who has a 4 or 5 year run of 17 and 19 minutes a night. It's just about normalizing the shooting. And as for fantasy, there might be the occasional stream zone area for him if someone goes down. But he's not the answer for them at point guard. But significant improvements is always worth highlighting. And the last guy I'm going to talk about here is Sandro Mamakilishvili. He was 390th in -1. He's 25 only. Played 46 games and 10 minutes a night. But down the stretch, we started to see what Mamu can do. 4 points and 3 rebounds in 10 minutes. It's like a double-double player. Half a 3 in 10 minutes. That's nice volume. 0.2 threes, 0.2 steals are pretty low. But 1 assist in 10 minutes? I'm intrigued as a center. He shot 30% from 3, 59% from 2, 74 from the line. There is enough there to go, when you need Mamu out there, he's not bad. But they've got a lot of these guys, Barlow, Collins, Mamu, Bassi, that I don't know where he really fits in. He's probably more of a small ball 5 than a 4, but I think he can play a little bit at the 4. Needs to work on that shooting. The 2 comps for him were year 5 of Spencer Hawes. Actually, the second comp was year 6 of Spencer Hawes. And then it was Jared Sullinger. Remember him? Jared Sullinger, Celtics legend, year 4. Strong rebounders. Advance-wise, 58th percentile EPM is very good for Mamu. 70th in CPM, very good. And his offensive rebounding quality, 81st. Very strong rebounder, passing flashes, some scoring upside when needed. I think there's a little bit there that if I had him and I was the Spurs, like they've got the restricted rights here, I would be interested in bringing him back or trying to figure out what I do with Barlow and Mamu and Bassi, but I'm comfortable with all of them. I think Sandro showed some things this season that were pretty intriguing. Or at least intriguing enough to go, you're not useless. Maybe I am useless, but regardless, that's the end of the show. So, we're done with the Spurs. I'm not going to go into Barlow or Bassi or Sidi Sissoko, who we didn't really get to see any of this season. Who else is on this roster that I didn't talk about? Raekwon Gray, David Duke, Devontae Graham, and Jamari Boyea. Even though we talked about those a little bit, I don't really think we need to care about those guys at all. The only guy I probably wish I could have talked about a little bit more is Dom Barlow. Hope they bring him back. He only started a small percentage of his games, 3%. But flashed a little bit of three-point shooting, 33%. He's 21. I think Barlow's a backup in the NBA. If you're a backup, or if you're a starter, or you're a coach or a manager, hit the thumb up on this video. Double bang it. Because it doesn't matter if you're a reserve or a starter. We've got slots for everybody in the DB squad. So jump across there, thumb it up, leave those comments. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.